Back in the 1980s, a few toy companies would come together to make vehicle, guns, and other miscellaneous devices that could turn into robots. The idea would spawn a popular TV show that came out in 1984 called Transformers. The story follows two warring factions of transforming robots, the Autobots and the Decepticons. The Autobots are the good robots led by their kind, wise, and fatherly general Optimus Prime, where the evil ones are led by their fearful and downright evil master Megatron. The long battle ends up draining their planet of its resources, so the Autobots board their ship known as the Ark to find a planet with similar resources so they can use it to heal their own planet. However, the Decepticons also board the Ark, and one final battle ensues before the Transformers land on prehistoric Earth, where they go into stasis for a few million years before they're awakened to continue their war in the 1980s. Sometime between seasons 2 and 3, 20 years had passed. More Autobots and Decepticons had joined their specific factions, and the Decepticons had successfully taken over control of Cybertron, and the Autobots had taken refuge on both Earth and Cybertron's moon. This is the start of the 1986 film Transformers the Movie, where we're introduced to the young, brash, and hot-headed Autobot, Hot Rod. As the movie goes on, we see legacy characters like Brawn, Ironhide, Prowl, Wheeljack, and Optimus Prime die. Optimus passes the matrix of leadership to Ultra Magnus before passing away, and the journey for the new Autobots starts. In space, Starscream decides that the heavily wounded members, including Megatron, are no good to them and ejects them out of Astro Train, where they float to the planetary transformer Unicron.
Welcome, Megatron. Who said that? I am a monument to all your sins. What?
He fixes them up and upgrades them into his own forces led by the upgraded form of Megatron, Galvatron. He sends them on a mission to destroy the Matrix of Leadership, as it's the only thing that can harm him. As the story goes on, Galvatron takes back leadership of the Decepticons by destroying Starscream, and they go after the remaining Autobots. Galvatron successfully gets the Matrix by demolishing Ultra Magnus and going back to Unicron, where he decides he wants to open the Matrix himself so he can destroy Unicron and be free from his enslavement. The Autobots, including Cup, Springer, Blur, RC, and Hot Rod, end up inside Unicron, where Hot Rod ends up separated and comes face to face with Galvatron, where they fight. Galvatron gets the upper hand and starts choking Hot Rod to death before Hot Rod grabs the Matrix, which shines bright, choosing him as the next leader of the Autobots, and the voice of Optimus Prime echoes his ascension into Rodimus Prime.
Arise, Rodimus Prime.
Rodimus makes short work of Galvatron and opens up the Matrix, destroying Unicron's body before leading the Autobots out and back to Cybertron. Now that I've given you a very bare-bones overview of the movie, let's talk about the treatment Rodimus received after the movie. Now, kids back in 1986 who watched the movie were already fans of Transformers and were very attached to the Autobots they'd seen on TV, including Optimus Prime. Fans were very upset that Optimus was dead, and they blamed Hot Rod for it. They think that Hot Rod jumping on Megatron gave Megatron the opening he needed to shoot Optimus and get him killed. However, if you watch the scene and pay attention, Optimus had Megatron dead to rights, and instead of finishing the job, he starts talking while Megatron crawls towards a blaster under some rubble out of Optimus' sight. At the rate this was going, it was going to end the same way as it happened in the movie. Megatron pulls out the blaster and shoots Optimus before he then hits Megatron, critically wounding him, ending the battle. The only difference is Hot Rod would have only been a bystander this time. Another thing is, we actually see Hot Rod evolve in the movie post the Battle of Autobot City. Before, he would rush into conflict head first and not think, but after, he actually made an attempt to step back and plan out his moves, going from shoot first, ask questions later, to try diplomacy, as we see him try with the Sharkticons and Junkions.
Don't act hostile. I'll use the universal greeting.
Universal greeting?
Watch, I'll have him eating out of my hand. Ba weep grana weep ninibong.
Ba weep grana weep ninibong?
Ba weep grana weep ninibong.
Guns aren't exactly friendly.
Neither are they, in case you haven't noticed.
What was that universal greeting again? Never mind, I remember.
Ba weep grana weep ninibong.
Ba weep, grana, weep, ninny bong.
Ba weep grana weep ninny bong.
Weep, grana, weep, ninny bong. Weep, grana, weep, ninny bong.
Even in the final battle with Galvatron, he actually tried to use distance in the fight, knowing a head-on battle wouldn't end in his favor. Hot Rod went from a brash young warrior to a leader, and not only that, he was a relatable leader. He questioned his capability. He struggled to make the right calls. He felt as though he wasn't living up to his predecessor. And let's be honest, that is something most people who make it to a leadership position believe. Managers, military personnel, job supervisors, everyone who has had to be in charge of other people knows the stress. But we also need to acknowledge that we're seeing Rodimus at the start of his time as a Prime. Whereas we saw Optimus after having been a Prime for many years, probably thousands of years at that point. He had already gone through the struggle and was finally at the point where he was comfortable in the position and knew what to do. He had been out on the front lines for millions of years before the first episode. I saw an interesting comment on a video talking about Rodimus, and it likened the two Primes to different positions in a family. Optimus was the wise father who always had the plan. Whenever things went to shit, he was calm and somehow knew everything would be okay, and you knew it would be. Rodimus was likened to the older brother who looked up to Dad, but once Dad had passed away, had to step up and take care of his family. And unlike Dad, who seemed to have all the answers, the brother struggles to fill in the giant shoes, but did the best he could. I thought it was an interesting comparison because it kind of makes sense.
Is there anyone in the universe who'll challenge the might of Megatron? There is one Megatron. I, Optimus Prime, challenge you.
Optimus Prime? He lives?
Our leader's back.
Optimus in the original series seemed to be almost perfect, and it was clear kids idolized him. And unfortunately, that was one of the reasons Rodimus wasn't given the love he could have gotten. Another reason, and one of the biggest issues that came with cartoons being released in the 80s, and that persisted until probably the 2010s, was toy release. In the 1980s, specifically, shows were made based around toys, and toys dictated the direction a show would go. If the toys sold well and the show was being watched, it kept going. If the toys weren't selling, it would affect the show, and the show would most likely change or be cancelled. In the case of Transformers, they had decided to discontinue most of the first two seasons' toys, so that meant phasing them out. How? Why, with mental scarring death! The writers of the movie actually mentioned multiple times to the higher-ups that they shouldn't kill Optimus, and the higher-ups didn't listen. The backlash they got from the fans actually made them backpedal another movie release. This one being G.I. Joe the movie, that had been pushed back 8 months even though it was finished before Transformers was. They only did it because they had planned to also kill off the main character, but then changed it to him going into a coma.
Yo, Joe. He's gone into a coma.
The next reason for Rodimus not doing so well? His toy wasn't selling. And not for a lack of trying, I want to believe. Ugh! Rodimus was just too small in comparison to Galvatron, and more kids preferred to buy and play with the much bigger Ultra Magnus toy who was around the same size as Galvatron. The sales of Ultra Magnus and Galvatron compared to Rodimus Prime also made them basically make Rodimus, you know, the leader of the Autobots, an afterthought, and give the rivalry that was supposed to be between the two new faction leaders instead to Ultra Magnus. Rodimus was short-staffed, and the kids who blamed him for Optimus's death grew up, and some of them really showed their resentment in the industry by writing comics that make every other Autobot hate Hot Rod, have him deal with the ghost of Unicron, give his character development to other Autobots like Hotshot and Bumblebee, have him possessed by Unicron, giving us Rodimus Unicronus. Nice goatee chops combo there, Macho Man. Or the worst of all, make him French.
Do not hit me again. She's very difficult.
Bonjour, chérie. Je m'appelle Hot Rod.
At what?
Hot Rod.
At red?
Hot Rod.
Hot Rod. Mm-hmm. It's his French accent.
Is he French?
No, he just likes the accent.
No. I hate the accent. But I can get rid of it.
At least he got a cool weapon, though.
My weapon will stop the time.
In recent years, he has been given a subtle redemption when he teams up with Soundwave to co-lead an underground Autobot Decepticon group of freedom fighters who have a similar idea of how Cybertron should be. But I would love to see Hot Rod get the due he deserves. I was born 10 years after the movie came out, and my first interaction with Transformers that I remember was with Transformers Armada. I wasn't given an Optimus who was portrayed like his G1 version. He was a great leader, but he did make mistakes. He needed help from his fellow Autobots like Scavenger and Jetfire, one who trained him and the other who was his second in command, who he could power link with to gain extra power. He wasn't presented as this amazing leader who could take on an entire groups of Decepticons by himself like his G1. At least that wasn't how I interpreted it. When I saw the original movie, I was 9 years old and I gravitated towards Hot Rod, who seemed very down to earth when we first met him. We saw his hot-headed reactions and saw his growth to become the new leader. I never once blamed him for Optimus's death, and I'm glad to see that more people have the same thought process, and maybe in the upcoming years, we'll see Hot Rod become Rodimus Prime again and get the development he's always deserved.